Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Soccer Sofa, hosted by myself, the Stod.
And me, the horse.
This week we've got one of the quickest, most explosive wingers to have ever played in the Premier League. 500 top flight appearances, 5 England international caps, and an FA Cup finalist. Ladies and gentlemen, roll VT!
Ball in, great header, good stop by Walker. Oh, but from the rebound, Salako's done it for Coventry. 14 minutes left, and John Salako does the business. Good little build-up before the boost ball in. Fine header by Johnson. Walker got a hand to it, but couldn't bury it round, and Salako helped him. Cheating ball. Again, struggled to get it clear. Salako's in there. John Salako takes his spot and lashes it home. 5-0 Coventry.
So season 1, episode 5 of the Soccer Sofa. Please welcome John Salako. How you doing, John?
I'm great, thank you. I'm quite enjoying lockdown, to be honest, but obviously the restrictions been eased now, so looking forward to the world becoming a normal place again.
Will it ever become a normal place? That is the question, John.
Do you know what? Absolutely. We've got to live it with hope, and we've been through a lot. I think for our generation, we haven't seen anything like this, and I think it just brings you back down to earth, and I think we're all so busy in our lives, and I think the world is hopefully going to be a better place once we are just enjoying family and enjoying, just the small things in life, I think, again.
Selfishly, it gives us time to have conversations with people like yourself, so thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. I've done a few of these now, and really enjoying it. It's nice to reminisce and talk about good old times, and and in these horrible times, if you can help anyone or send a message, then that's all even better.
Yeah, and it would be fair to say, John, there was some really good times. If we could take you right back to nearly the beginning, in 1979, when you first came over from Nigeria as a 10-year-old, I think you ended up in Kent. What was it like when you first came over? What were your first impressions?
Yeah, because it was kind of a crazy journey, because my dad did his bachelor's in America, did his master's here, and then he met my mum, and then, took her back to Nigeria, had 5 kids, and then sadly died in a car crash in 75. And then my mum brought us all back in 79, and pretty crazy. So I would have had an accent, sort of trying to integrate and get into, English society was kind of strange and wonderful and exciting. It was brilliant, and it was lovely. But it was funny because my mum didn't really want us to go and live in London, just because of the problems in London with youths and getting into trouble. And she actually grew up in Westerham in Kent, and we actually came back. So she brought us back to Westerham in Kent, and I schooled in Sevenoaks, which was incredible. Quite sporting school. So I was sort of very lucky, very nice area to get brought up in.
So, you've kind of walked into my next question of what was school like for you? Were you any good in the classroom, or was it all on the sports field?
Do you know what? My dad was a university lecturer and worked for BP, and my mum was my headmistress when I was in primary school in Nigeria. And
right.
I was always in trouble. She would have to give me the cane every now and then. I was the naughty kid, just wanted to play, run around, and it was mad. So I was one of those kids that I always ended up in front of the headmaster, and he'd be saying, like, John, you need to concentrate on your schoolwork, and you need to, we're gonna. I can remember the headmaster sort of, the only, the way they would sort of calm me down was to say, well, you can't play sport. And I'd be like, oh, no, don't take away my sport. So I'd have to do my homework. But my mum was always on at me about, sort of, your schoolwork. And I just wanted to play sport. I was always the one looking out the window and dreaming of, being a sportsman. And, I did everything, cross country for Kent, did athletics for Kent. I played football for Kent, cricket for Kent, rugby for Kent.
Wow.
I was always playing sport. In the little village I grew up, we played, I played for the school in the morning, and I played for Western men's side in the afternoon on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I was playing for a team called Western Red. So I used to play 3 games of football in the football season. And in the cricket season, I'd play, on the Saturday and Sunday, both for Western Cricket Club. So, really my time was all taken up with either training or playing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And well, with 5 of you, I imagine you probably had a decent 5-a-side football team as well.
Yeah, they always made me go in goal. My 2 older brothers, they stick me in goal. It's really weird. I sort of enjoyed going in goal, and I actually ended up in goal once. Before, it was only 3 substitutes, and you had to decide whether you had a keeper on the bench or not. Nigel Martin got sent off against Wimbledon at Selhurst, and I went in goal because I'd go in goal in training as well because I used to enjoy it. So it worked out. So all those hours that my brothers used to make me go in goal, paid off in the end. So it was cool.
And then, of course, Crystal Palace was your first club. How did you get scouted? What was the sort of story there?
Crazy story. So I'm sort of 12. We're 13. You talk. We didn't even dare to dream about being sports or football. It's not like it is now. I wanted to be in the SAS or the army or I wanted to be in the Air Force. And I was an under 14s, and I was scoring a lot of goals. And the under 15s manager came and he said, "Look, it's too easy for him. Come and play a year above." A guy called John Mitchell. And so I went to play a year above in the under 15s, and I was still, sort of scoring loads of goals and doing really well. And it was John Mitchell that actually wrote to Palace, and he said, "Look, we've got this lad here that you should come and see." And I still remember, it was a guy called Gilbert Honey Jones, who was a scout. He came, and then he watched me play, and then he invited me to a trial. And there was about 40 of us. Went up to Netherland Hospital, pitch up there, rain in. We all played a game. And then out of all that, they invited me to come and train at Mitcham on a Monday and a Thursday night. And I did that for a few months, which was a hell of a journey, by the way, from Westerham to get to Mitcham. I used to leave Sevenoaks, come home, grab my kit, get to Mitcham, 3 buses later, 2 hours later, train for an hour, then do the same thing back, which was crazy. But after about 3 months, they signed me on schoolboy forms. And then obviously Stevie Cobble came down, signed me as a 16-year-old apprentice. And as I say, the rest of it was history, really.
Yeah, and we've obviously done a bit of research on you, and your youth team days sound like a bit of fun. Certainly not what they are today, cleaning boots. And I heard a story from Richard Shaw that you teased Ian Evans, your assistant manager, about his haircut, and he bog flushed you. I mean, we probably should put out there that we don't condone that behaviour, but it's a laugh.
Do you know what? It was an era where it was so tough. I mean, there was a lot of discipline. I mean, we had to clean boots, we had to get the cut, tea for the pros, get their kit. We had to clean the changing rooms, tidy up. And do you know what? We had to make sure that everything was right before and after training before we could go home. And the senior pros were quite tough with us. And, we were cocky. I mean, I was really a cocky young lad, and I was having myself a little bit, and they would knock you down. They would give you a good, they would give you a smack, and, they would make sure that you knew that they were seniors. You had to be respectful. So, those days were, they were tough, but it was good because it toughened you up, and it brought you up the right way. Certainly the day I signed pro and I didn't have to do all those duties anymore was a good day. It's a bit like passing your driving test, it's just that independence and growing up. So, but you have to earn your stripes. I think in life, I think you do have to be respectful for your elders, and everything's got to have, a meaning and a worth. And if anything comes too easy in life, I don't think you really appreciate it. I think you do have to fight, and you have to work for it. And that there was a process back then. And, you know, not going back, you know, like we're in this pandemic now, you know, but we look at Sir Captain, you know, Sir Colonel Moore, you know, they grew up with respect and they were tough characters, and, you know, they did their duty and they had honour and respect and duty, and it was a different time. So, you know, nowadays I think, you know, it is a different time. We're trying to embrace everything, but, you know, the kids want everything now and they want it too easy and they want it on a plate, and really in life is, you know, anything worthwhile is hard work, and you have to work for it and earn it, and that's when it means something and it's worthwhile. So, you know, certainly, I mean, Richard Shaw and I, you know, we would chat sometimes and think, oh, this is too hard, we can't, you know, I don't want to do this, but it is, you do have to persevere, and you know, thankfully we both came through.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it certainly is a different place these days. I mean, you were talking about Palace from a team perspective, but what about the crowd back in those days and the atmosphere of Palace as a place?
Yeah, do you know what? It's crazy. I mean, you know, I think when I grew up, especially, I was going to say, you know, when I was at school, when I first went to school in Sevenoaks, there was like, I don't know, there's got to be 1,000 kids at the school. I was the only black kid at the school. And I can remember in the second year, there was a lad called Michael Sterling, another black lad, came to the school, and I was so relieved. I wasn't the only black kid in the school. And, you know, sort of going into football and going into South London Palace, it was, you know, obviously it's a mixed cultural experience, which was nice. And Palace was a side where, you know, you've got to remember Palace was struggling. Palace were a yo-yo side. You'd had the team of the 80s, and then, you know, we were struggling in the first division, or as it was, the championship then. And you know, the fans were, you know, unforgiving and harsh. You know, it was a tough environment to come into, but you've got to embrace it and take it on. So I think that's the biggest thing for me as a kid. You're just scared, you know, you as much as I wanted it, you know, the nerves to go out and play in front of that crowd. And you know that if you do something good, they're going to cheer you, and if you do something bad, they're going to let you know. And you know, that's the biggest lesson you learn. You know, you've got to be tough, and you've got to be able to take, you know, the bits where you don't get cheered, and you've got to go back for more and be prepared to get on the ball and play, and, you know, and just keep. And that's where you practice and you put everything into it, so that when you go out there, you're half decent, because it's such an unforgiving environment if you are good.
And back then, I mean, I've read the likes of Merson's autobiography, even Gazza's, and I think there was probably quite a big drinking culture. I think was Wednesday your day off, and so you'd go out Tuesday night, and yeah, that's something you experienced.
Yeah, so if you didn't play, you know, a lot of times we play Saturday, Tuesday, and so you probably have Wednesday would be your day off. And yeah, you're right. You probably, if you had a game Tuesday, you might all get together on a Wednesday. If you didn't have your train Monday, Tuesday, you'd have Wednesday off. Then you might go out Tuesday night or Wednesday, and then come back in Thursday. And it, you know, it was just the culture. It was, you know, it was team bonding, team building. We young lads, you know, the senior pros it was just what happened. And certainly you had to really screw your life and be a bit smart, with the fact that you almost sort of had to go and be there, but you didn't really have to partake and go too far and drink too much. And we soon learned that. I mean, Richard was really good. Me and Richard, you know, go and have a few, and then slope away and get off. And it was very much really, you had to just make sure you looked after yourself, because, you know, if you got into that slippery slope of being too involved, but, you know, we were desperately, you know, ambitious, and, you know, I just loved playing football, and I wanted to play football when you sort of knew, as much as fun that was, and as much as that was good for team building and morale and getting to know the lads, you know, you knew that wasn't something that really needed to be done too much. And, you know, seeing them do that does wake you up to it. And it's around that 90, what are we talking about, 93, 94, because I can remember sports scientists came in, and I can remember sort of sitting with presentations with, you know, obviously Gareth Southgate and the boys, and, you know, you're listening to that stuff, and that's when he started coming in about, you know, nutrition, diet, not drinking. You know, you started having foreign players coming here who were of a different culture, different mindset of, wow, you guys drink, you know, you drink, you know, you shouldn't be drinking. So it started, you know, coming into football of, you know, the psychological side, the nutrition side, and obviously the nutrition and how you should eat, how you should maintain your body to get maximum benefit and go forward. So a lot of those early people like Gianfranco Zola, you know, people like Patrick Vieira, you know, Thierry Henry, they just didn't drink. You know, the foreign players just didn't understand that this drink culture that we had here, and it did take a while, but it's you know, probably even still your John Terrys, your Lampards, that era, your Rooneys, they, you know, still had a drink when they could.
Who were the party boys and who were the naughty boys?
What, at Palace?
Palace.
I tell you, who was we would say, you know, chief entertainment officer was Alan Pardew. So Pards would put all the. I think because Alan Pardew came into the game when he was 26, so he played non-league. He worked, you know, he knew, you know. So, and I think I don't know if he had a share in a sort of a wine bar in Sheen, but Alan was very good at, you know, he was very good at getting all the lads together, and he would arrange where we were going, what we were doing, and partying. So he, you know, because I think he, you know, it's like people who are in football don't communicate that well, you know, whereas people who work in a job, if you work on a building site, you've got to talk to each other and go, can you pass me that brick? Can you pass me that cement? Can you go and do that? Can you go and do that? Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. So I think it's really weird as a coach, you spend all your time telling players to talk to themselves. Kids, talk, pass me the ball, turn, you know, man on, you know, it's really weird. But I think Pard's always had that experience of life, if you know what I mean. So he brought that to the table. I think, yeah, I mean, to be fair, we had a lot of great lads. I always look at it in two. There was that first group of Jeff Thomas, John Pemberton, Ian Wright, Andy Gray, Eddie McGoldrick. And then there was another side when all those had gone. Then there was the Southgates, the Newmans, the Chris Colemans, the Richard, you know. And through it was probably me and Richard were the two longest serving players there that saw both eras, both camps, and both brilliant. The first one I would say was harsh, very strong dressing room, tough dressing room. We were kids, so we got it in the air. Whereas, you know, when it was that Chris Armstrong, Gareth Southgate, Chris Coleman, that team, that was a great team because you were one of the older, more mature players that you know, looking after the lads. So that was a very enjoyable side to play in. But yeah, really good happy times. But the first side that finished third in the top flight got to that FA Cup final and won the Zenith Data Systems final, and that was that was an incredible side. That side was exceptional.
So you're talking about the team between 1986, when you made your debut, and 1990, which was an unbelievable year for you.
Yeah, it was incredible. Do you know, that year I'd started the season on loan at Swansea, and when they got beat 9-0 by Liverpool, I was on loan at Swansea. I was playing in the Cup Winners' Cup in Athens against Panathinaikos for Swansea, and you know, you sort of thought, wow. And the worst thing was that I heard it could have been worse. So, you know, I came back, and that's really when I sort of cemented myself and came back. And Richard was on loan at Hull, Richard Shaw. I came back. We bought Nigel Martin, first £1 million goalkeeper. We bought Andy Thorne from Wimbledon. And obviously, you know, that epic semi-final against Liverpool at Villa Park, 4-3, just, you know, still makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up to think you know, because Liverpool were the team of the 80s. They were I think they won the title 7 or 8 times in the 80s. And, you know, your John Barnes, Steve McMahon, your Hansons, Lawrensons, you know, your Grobelars. And, you know, you look at that team and you think Ian Rush, and you think, wow, for us to dare to dream. But, you know, we turned up, no Ian Wright, and we were like, yeah, we're having this. And, you know, went into the final with Man United with the same attitude. Come on, bring it on. Brian Robson, McClare, you know, Hughes. Yeah, let's have it. You know, let's do this. You know, you Steve Bruce's, and we nearly did it. You know, we were six minutes away till the heartbreak of Mark Hughes, and then that horrible replay. But, you know, happy days. I mean, at the time I was devastated. with that final. But, you know, looking back now, I'm glad I kept I always threatened to throw that runners-up medal away, but I kept it.
Well, we were going to go back and talk about that because for those fans who don't know, obviously you went on to the FA Cup final in 90, and you talk about the semi-final, Liverpool 4-3. I've got to go back to some of your comments earlier, though, when you say you look at that team and say, wow, I'm an Evertonian. I've never looked at that team and said, wow. But I know football fans across the world will. So the idea of you guys turning them over 4-3 is superb for me. What was it like playing in that game?
It was just incredible. I mean, it was just, I can't really describe it in a sense where I think we were such underdogs going into that game. And I think Stevie Coppell, we were very relaxed. We had a you know, Stevie Coppell set us up in a certain shape because we didn't have Ian Wright. So I was playing like a left wing back role, but I had to mark Ray Houghton, man-to-man marking. You know, we were just like, let's keep it tight. Let's concentrate set pieces. Let's try and ruffle a few feathers and see where we get. And it just, you know, it's one of those games. It was just the way it turned out. I mean, we conceded a penalty, I think with about 3 minutes of normal time to go, which I think John Barnes or Steve McMahon slotted in to make it 2-1. And or was it? And that was it. The game was over. And then you know, we there. I think it was Andy Gray got the one that made it. So that made it 3-2. Andy Gray got the 1-3-3, and then Pardew obviously got the winner. But with 2 minutes to go, we were out. We were down and out. We were done. And it was just the drama of that. And I think for the Palace fans, I think all the Palace fans still remember that day. I think that day was an iconic day that will live in the memory of anyone who was there or watching that on TV as a Palace fan. It was amazing to be part of that.
And there's an iconic picture of you up on the shoulders celebrating as well. So
yeah,
iconic is the right word.
Yeah, unfortunately, do you know what? Someone rang me about 2 days ago and said, unfortunately, that lad that he picked me up that day and I was sat on his shoulders, he passed away. And, you know, the family just wanted me to send me a picture so I could sign it. And it's for them to keep. And, you know, such an iconic picture that I've got and I've seen and so many things that I see it everywhere. That picture of, you know, that rascal haircut can stay in my hair. And, you know, just after the game and you know, how I can't even remember how I got onto his shoulders. He must have just come and, you know, they picked me up. I ended up on his shoulders and, you know, it was such a wonderful, wonderful moment. I think we celebrated for about 3 days after that.
Was Pardew the party leader on those 3 days?
Of course, yeah. We headed back to Cheam. He was in charge. He'd organised the night out, yeah. And
before we get to the final, I've got to ask you about, you know, what I think was one of the most iconic parts of that year, the 90s Cup song, and you on the television. Do you remember the 90s Cup song? And I think it was the James show you guys were on.
Glad all over, yeah. No, yeah.
Glad all over.
Do you know, it was just a roller coaster. So after the semi-final, everything just started, you know, you started sinking in that you were in the FA Cup final. You know, the FA Cup final was like the Holy Grail. It was so treasured and it was so much embedded in all our lives. We grew up watching FA Cup finals. It was like a whole day, wasn't it? It started at sort of midday or, you know, sort of 11, 12 o'clock and you watched it, the build-up and the game. And, you know, to go and get your suits done and then doing the song and, you know, just all the interviews and getting your boots and the sponsor and just the whole place was incredible. And, you know, we went on to Blue Peter. It was Clive Jameson's show was the big one. That was like the, you know, the Terry Wogan show, wasn't it? It's like the big chat show that we went on and we did the song. And, you know, we went down to Abbey Road Studios to make that. Obviously, there's the iconic cover was them across that, you know, like the Beatles going across that zebra crossing. And, you know, we just loved it. We just embraced it, enjoyed it. I think I look as though I'm having fun on at the time, which I'm a bit embarrassed about. I get a fair bit of stick about that.
You still have the tracksuit?
Oh my God, those tracksuits, they were brilliant, weren't they?
Please say you've got that upstairs and you can go and get it for us.
Do you know what? I haven't. I should have kept that Buckter tracksuit, because they were proper shell suits, weren't they? They were like.
I'm a Scouser and I was impressed.
Well,
All right, so.
Oh my God, they were, it was brilliant. You look back and that was the height of the tracksuit fashion back then. So you look back and it's all good.
Perfect. Well, then we go obviously on to the final, and we all know the outcome and the replay, but obviously to go into that game and even to force a replay, just talk us through the final.
Do you know what? Again, we didn't have Ian Wright, so we just pretty much went with the same kind of tactical setup. I mean, Stevie Copper was brilliant. He was a genius, really, like that. We set up. I was marking. I had Danny Wallace. I had Brian McClare, and Richard, I think, was marking Danny Wallace, and we kind of went man for man again. And it was almost to that rigid formation of wherever McClare went, I followed him. So although I was sort of playing left wing back, if McClare went over to, play on the right, or on the left, say, and he swapped with Danny, I literally went with McClare and Richard swapped with Richard. It was that regimental. And it was all about keeping it tight. It's about, frustrating Man United and again, set plays, set pieces and really trying to produce some magic at some stage to upset them. But, the way it won, and it all changed when Wrighty came on. It's that first goal where he turns Pallister and finishes, and then obviously the second one where I cross it for him, and it's 3-2, and the worst thing I did actually is Wembley. There was a dog track, and the fans are literally seriously, they're about 80 yards away. And after that third goal, I ran to the fans. And by the time I got back on the pitch, I had cramp in my calf. I was like, what did you just do that for? And the turf at Wembley was so deep. It was like a real lush carpet, and it sapped your energy. And I could just remember going into that last sort of 15 minutes. I was cramping up, and you're getting tired. It was a hot afternoon. It's a shame, but we had to do the 120 minutes of it, and it was a shame, really. It's a shame, really. I wish it'd have ended on that Saturday. Just go extra time, penalties, bang. Coming back, sort of, because we'd arranged, we had a hotel booked in Knightsbridge, and going back there, it was sort of damn square. We went back, everyone was sort of like, we had to go back. And then I think training and going back on that Thursday was just weird. And then that Bumblebee kit, that black and yellow kit that Ron Nodes chose for the replay, which was all about the sponsors, Buckter. It just wasn't right. So anyway, shame. I've never watched it back, to be honest. That replay, that Thursday night replay. But we ended up going on a 3-week tour of the West Indies after that, which was fantastic, I have to say. We played Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Trinidad and Tobago, and who else was it? Who was the other one we played? I think we played either St. Lucia. So typically it would have been Ron Nodes sort of rang them, said FA Cup finalists, put us up in a hotel. So it was pretty much a freebie trip as long as we played a game on each island. But it was wonderful. We had and it was so fitting, going on a trip like that. And the weirdest thing was that everyone had seen that cup final. Everyone had watched that, and they loved Palace. They were like, we were like, those underdogs that they loved. We dared to dream and step onto that stage. So it was kind of mad, sort of travelling halfway around the world, and that was the FA Cup. Everyone watched it, around the world. They just knew who we were.
And you guys went over to the West Indies and St. Lucia. So did Wrighty get his dodgy shirts out?
Oh yeah, Wrighty was the main man, wasn't he? They loved Wrighty. It was such a good trip, I must admit. It was so brilliant. We were young and, playing, and the adulation we got was quite incredible. And obviously, Wrighty's the star man, so he's,
Didn't he used to give you a shirt if you gave him assisted in a goal?
Do you know what? I mean, that's an interesting story that made, you know, I think it's been in their books, but they did what they were so fierce with. They were the main men, and they were the ones that scored the goals. And you know, we had this with Stevie Cotton. Stevie Cotton did it quite well, really, where, you know, their whole thing was, it was about them. And they actually, they would say, listen, set me up, you set me up a goal, we'll bring some stuff in here. They did bring a few bits in, but nothing decent, nothing. Like they talk about it like they gave me a whole wardrobe. You know, I think I got some nice shoes off Ian once, and Mark brought in a couple of bits. But the truth was, you know, they were literally, you know, we score goals, you make them, we score. That was it. And if I try to do anything different, they would go ballistic. And I can remember, you know, in the final game of the 91 season, when we finished third, we were playing Man United at home, and I needed 2 goals to get my goal bonus. I was shooting from everywhere. Righty and Brighty were going absolutely ballistic. Seriously, they were going nuts. And do you know what? It's funny. I saw them the other day. It's on Twitter. I got my 2 goals, and I got my goal bonus. But Brighty didn't talk to me for about 2 months. Righty's great. Righty's fine. He congratulated me after the game. But they were fiercely competitive. But they were legends. I mean, they were brilliant. And you know, it was amazing to play with them. And funny enough, you know, obviously once Righty left to go to Arsenal, we were just, you know, decimated. We weren't the same. And Righty left and Jeff Thomas left, and that side just collapsed. And then obviously, until the next side where, you know, sort of Gareth Southgate and Coleman and Armstrong came through.
Can I ask about those guys leaving? Because unless I'm wrong, it was a bit of a sad time for the club due to comments that you talk about Ron Nodes, but comments that maybe Ron Nodes had said that meant that some of the black and ethnic minority players had actually started to leave the club.
Yeah, what his comment about we needed a strong white man to get us through the winter.
I've got the quote here. I think he said that we have the black players for their skill and flair, and the white players for their brains and common sense.
No way. Is that what he actually said? I mean, look. Ron needed a PR man. Ron needed someone to speak to the press. He was old school. He was. He meant well, Ron. You know, he's a very successful businessman, and you know, he often got caught up with getting, you know, a few headlines for saying, you know, things like that. But Ron was brilliant to everyone. Ron was great, and no one had an issue with Ron. And certainly, the big conversation with Righty, you know, we finished third. You know, we beat your beloved Everton at Wembley. I got one that afternoon, by the way. That's that little one. But I was proud of that, because beating Neville Southall was one of the greatest goalkeepers with that header, cheeky little header. Proud moment. But you know, that Righty went into Ron and said, "Look, we need to buy some players, and you know, we want something special here." And Ron was kind of like, "Well, all right, you know, we think we're all right." And you know what? That same season, Leeds finished 4th. We finished 3rd. Leeds bought Cantona, Wallace and Dorigo and won the title the year after, and went on playing Champions League. We bought no one. We sold Righty. I got injured. We sold Righty. We went down. So it's just sliding doors of spend a bit of money. If we'd have bought Dorigo, Cantona and Wallace, maybe we could, do you know what? We could have gone on and won the league. You know what I mean? But certainly I think we'd have finished top 5, top 6. Without a doubt. So it just shows you that investment at the right time and driving forward. So, you know, it was a disappointing time to say I got injured as well. So that was the beginning of, you know, by the time I sort of recovered, the side had changed. People had moved on, and it was a different world.
Of course, then we're at 91, but in the 90s was your England call-up. What was that like? You must have done well.
Do you know, it was mad because I was born in Nigeria, I qualified to play for Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales or England. And my mum's granddad was French Canadian. So my first call up was Terry Yorath from Wales. called me up, and you know, I sort of spoke to him and I said, okay, leave it with me, I'll think about it. And then Nigeria came knocking, and again, I was sort of, I've done it, you know, okay, let me have a thing. And I went to see Steve Coppell, and I said to Steve, and I said, look, I've had a couple of offers to play international football. He said, well, what's in your heart? I said, well, I want to play for England. There is no doubt in my mind that, you know, I'm English and I just want to play for England. And he said, you're good enough, so wait. And, you know, but that was Steve. Steve didn't say very much. So I left, and to be honest, I think it must have been, you know, obviously about 6 months later, I'd scored those 2 goals against Man United in the last game. We'd finished third, we were flying high, getting loads of, you know, and I was mowing the lawn, and the phone, you know, and the girlfriend at the time shouts out, John, it's the England manager, Graham Taylor, on the phone for you. And I'm like, yeah, right. Shorzy, or, you know, that's Andy Thorne, Andy. So I go up to the phone, I'm like, yeah, Shorzy, yeah. He's like, John, this is Graham Taylor, England manager. I'm like, oh, bloody hell, it is Graham Taylor. And he's like, I just wanted to let you know, first to tell you that you've been selected for the England squad and to go on the Australasia tour. So I didn't know what to say, and thank you, sir. You know, put the phone down and just sort of sat down and stared at the wall for a while. Then I think after a while I put on the teletext, and there it was. It was like Gary Lineker, Stuart Pearce, David Platt, John Salako. I was like, oh my God. And I took a picture of it, and I'm like, oh God, yeah, that was some. And then you got to let it sink in, and then, you know, I was just like, come on, let's do this. This is happening. Yeah, let's go and smash it.
So an Australasia tour. So I think it was New Zealand, Malaysia, Australia. I mean, an England tour. I'm watching Harry's Heroes at the moment. There must have been some funny goings on with that.
Yeah. Do you know what? I mean, England was quite sensible. We had a coach called Steve Harrison, who was a brilliant coach, and he was a funny guy. He was always keeping us entertained. I mean, we'd walk through a crowded shopping centre, and he'd walk through the fountain in the shopping centre and just not blink an eyelid. And, you know, he did things. It was such a wonderful time. And, you know, I think everyone's there, and you're nervously excited about part of England and wanting to do well. And, you know, I made my debut. I came off the bench, you know, against Australia in the Olympic Stadium in Sydney, you know, which was incredible. And I can remember just floating on air, just coming out, and, you know, you feel like the whole world's looking at you, and it was the proudest moment. And just, you know, went on to play New Zealand twice, and then obviously Malaysia, setting up a couple of goals for Gary Lineker. And, you know, you just think, yeah, this is where I want to be. This is it. This is the best thing ever. And then I came back, and then I played against the unified German side. You know, so Germany won Italia 90 in that famous, where they beat the Italians, and obviously Gaza crying in the semi-final. And then they unified the sides, and I've still got, you know, I've got the shirt here. I don't know why it's not up on the wall, but I've got Andrew Smoller's shirt, and just coming out of Wembley was, you know, I can remember going out on the coach, and you've got, you know, as I say, young Shearer, you know, Lineker, Platt, you know, Des Walker, Stuart Pearce, you know, and Mark Wright, and you know, sort of Lee Dixon. And you're looking around that side, and, you know, I'm on the coach driving to Wembley, and you just think, yeah, this is the whole country is watching. And that was amazing. But once you get there, you've got to switch into, right, it's game time, it's game mode. Like the cup final, you've got to play the game, not the occasion. You've got to get yourself into game mode. And you know, when you stand in a tunnel with Klinsmann and you know, Matthias and Andres Moeller and Riedler and Doll, and you're just like, you know, for a second you want to go, oh my God, that's what's his name? Is that an Ivy shirt? I can remember asking Lothar Matthäus for his shirt, and he's like, Lineker already bags there. I was like, gutted. Yet. But yeah, that was a proper surreal moment. And I can remember going up after the game, like before I left the stadium, I went and just stood up in the goalmouth and Wembley and just looked round and just thought, did I just do that? Did that just happen? Was that real? And just breathed it in for a couple of minutes, and then got in my car. So that was that was the pinnacle, the moment. So the cup final, I think the semi-final against Liverpool, the cup final against Man United, but obviously the walking out at Wembley for England, that was pinnacle.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, and it's great to see how you're reliving the moment. Almost, it would be how I would react as well. That is this really me? But then you had some injuries along the way, and to put it bluntly, do you think there could have been more international appearances if it wasn't for some of the injuries?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the sad bit. That's the devastating bit. It was, without a doubt. Without a doubt, I think there's no doubt in my mind that I think certainly there was so maybe 20, 30, 40 caps there for me to have, European Championships, World Cups. That was the dream. I certainly believe that. And, when that came along, that was a killer. That was a bummer. So you just got to get on with it. And I think, I went off to West Hollywood, went off to America. Steve Coppell and Ron Nose were brilliant. We found the best people in the world to do it, because we're going from a position where the surgeons are saying, look, he's done. This kid's done. He's not going to play a game. And Stevie Coppell, obviously, finished with a knee injury, and Ron were like, well, let's see what we can do. So I ended up going out to West Hollywood and having an operation there, and coming back, and 10 months later, I'm playing again. I'm back in England side, and then it goes again. So that was the that was the bummer moment. I think the first time I sort of got through it. The second time I was absolutely just on the floor. So I went back to America, and I went in '94 as well. So the World Cup was in America. That was my time. That was my World Cup. That was so all of that was just just horrifically devastating. But you got to suck it up and get on with it and come back and do your rehabilitation. I got into I was doing loads of stuff with Sky. I started doing a bit of television, because you start thinking about, well, this might be it. What am I going to do? So started doing telly, started doing a few other things, did my coaching badges. I got qualified, fully qualified coach by the time I was 25, I think. So I started doing all that. You've got to, you start going down a different track, start getting your mentality right of if that's not going to happen, what else am I going to do? So that was a very, very difficult time. But it's like anything, you've got to get the right mentality. You've got to be positive, drive forward, and make the best of every situation, because that's just the way it is. That's life. You can't sit and cry about stuff. Got to get on with it and make a new chapter, write a new, whether it's getting diagnosed with cancer or getting whatever comes along. You've got to hit it straight on and give it the best shot you got. And that's really my mentality. And
Well, I think there was a couple of stories of I think you were about to sign for Liverpool and you got injured in the game before the official paperwork was completed. Is that true? Was there?
Yeah, you never got Liverpool came in. I think they bid $1 million at the time, which I thought was a lot of money. Ron turned it down. Man United came in, and Arsenal came in. And at the time, I didn't really know about Man United and Arsenal. I did get an inkling about the Liverpool thing. The closest it came was going to Bari, and I was up for that. I just wanted to go to Bari, and we were going to sit down and have a chat the day after the Leeds game, which is the game where I obviously got the first knee injury. So, but I was excited about it. I started learning Italian. Serie A was the place to be. It was the biggest league in the world. It was exciting. And I'd had my sights set on, I was thinking, why not? Let's do it. And when the agent rang me and said, do you fancy going to Italy? I was, yeah, great. And he said, look, let's sit down. They came over. So that Leeds game, you know, Graham Taylor was there. We were going to Sweden in the European Championships in the summer. You know, my mind was set on going off to Bari to play in Italy, and you know, obviously, maybe with the view to kick on, maybe get onto one of the bigger clubs after that. It was a good plan in my head, but yeah.
The other one we came across, of course, was Newcastle, which apparently is far away. But then
yeah,
it's further than Newcastle.
It's another classic Ron Nodes moment. So I was on holiday in Jamaica. Agent rings me, said, Keegan wants you to sign. I said, great. I signed. You know, when I get back, he said, no, Kevin wants to come back now. Flew there. He was trying to sign David Ginola. And David Ginola was asking for a lot of money, 30 grand a week, I think, or something stupid. He wanted this, he wanted that. He was being a bit of a prima donna. So Kevin, being Kevin, says, right, Sodja, I won't sign you, I'll sign John Salako. And at the time, you know, obviously, I think Sir John Hall and the guys up there were like, come on, Kevin, let's sort the deal. This lad's good, you know, Ginola's good. So he drags me up there, and I'm basically a pawn in a game of chess. So in the end, Kevin says to me, look, it's not going to get done. I think we're going to sign Ginola, so, you know, you'll have to go back. So at the time, they say to Ron Nodes, look, we're sorry for wasting your time, but look, you put out whatever press release you want. So Ron, in his wisdom, thought he didn't really want to scare people off like I'd failed the medical or something had gone wrong. So he puts that out. He says, John didn't want to move as far north as Newcastle. And it's like, what the hell? I got about 3,000 letters from my irate Geordies, Newcastle fans. But I was this, I was that, what's wrong with Newcastle, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, that was one of Ron, you know, as I said, Ron needed, you know, a PR man. He needed someone doing some serious, you know. And I came back, obviously devastated because Newcastle, you know, such a big club, you know, great players, and obviously played for Kevin. And I got the phone call from Ron Atkinson to come up there. So I ended up going up, speaking to Ron and signing for Coventry, which was fantastic, really, because although we were struggling, there was a great side and some good lads, you know, Huckabee, Whelan, you know, and McAllister came in the end, but, you know, Paul Williams, you had Dublin up front. Peter and Love was one of my best mates there, great lad, brilliant player. Roland Nilsson, you know, you had the Burrows, David Burrows, Brian Burrows, Grizovic, Marcus, you know, it was a great time. I loved my time at Coventry.
What's it like working for Big Ron?
Do you know what? Big Ron was just, you know, a bit similar to Kevin Keegan. Was, you know, he was a big personality, and, you know, he really gave you a lot of confidence, built you up. Not brilliant tactically, didn't do any coaching, but he just gave you little bits of words of wisdom, a bit of pearls, and gave you a platform to go out there and play. You know, he literally would, you know, he just had a way about him, you know, that was strong, powerful, but, you know, he made you feel good and confident. And, you know, we did do well under him. And the lads loved him. I did. I loved playing for Big Ron. And, you know, he was chalk and cheese with Strack. Obviously, you know, Strachan was a proper workhorse, proper disciplinarian, real fiery, you know, you leave it all out there type character. You know, he was at the training ground at 7:30, you know, he was the last one to leave. You know, everything was about diet, nutrition. You know, you didn't want us drinking, or, you know, it was proper. You came to, you know, I remember we do set pieces, and, you know, I took corners from both sides, and sometimes, you know, maybe I'd knock a couple of bad ones, and he'll be like, right, if you don't knock the next one into the right spot, we'll all go running. And of course, if you know, we're all running, everyone would be pissed off, and they'll be like, bloody hell, Sal, just not. And that was Strack, you know, he'd have us out there doing pattern of play for an hour, 2 hours, just going through throw-ins, and, you know, the attention to detail was incredible. Whereas Ron was more of a, right, lads, let's go and have these, you know, we're better than these, let's go and beat them. And be like, right, Gaffer, okay. You know, not, you know, obviously within reason, but, you know, Strack was, you know, full on, but, you know, just totally chalk and cheese.
And then you went on to another great manager because Keegan finally got his man.
Yes, so then he did. I spoke to Kevin, went down and signed at Fulham, which was brilliant. I mean, I had 2 children when I was in Coventry, and, you know, Mrs. had a hard time there. She was desperate to come back to London. And I said, okay, and I got a chance. We came back to Fulham, lovely, good club, really nice club. And obviously with Al Fayed, and we had a tremendous season. It started really well. Picked up a calf that was really niggly, and really, things didn't really go that well. Although the team was winning, we got through the season. Then Kevin went off to manage England at the end of that season, and Paul Bracewell took over. And he just, he said to me, obviously not part of his plans. So that's when I went off to Charlton with Kerbishley.
Just going back to Fulham, what was it like, obviously, when Fayed took over? Because he was a character in himself, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a funny one, Mohamed Al Fayed. I just remember we were playing Man United in the Cup. I think it's about the 4th round away at Old Trafford. And Al Fayed flew in on it with his helicopter, and he came to the hotel, and we had dinner together. And we had these gold balls. They were quite large gold balls in like footballs. And he sort of got, I said, yeah. He said, we all have one of these if we win. We beat Man United, everyone get golden balls. You get golden balls. And, he's a big, big character. Kevin would never let us have a Harrods card and go shopping there, which I was a bit peeved at. He had one because he thought, oh, don't spoil them, don't give them too much, but it was a great guy. I mean, listen, we'd go there one afternoon. We're in the dressing room, we're getting dressed, and Mohamed Al Fayed comes in with Michael Jackson. It's like
April.
We are like sitting there going, no way. And the weirdest thing was, he sort of came in and he said, hi, everyone, just wanted to quickly introduce Michael Jackson, blah, blah, blah. And obviously everyone stops and Kevin's not happy. It's like, we're getting ready for the game, and everyone's sort of like, and in a way you kind of feel bad because it was one of those take your breath away moments. And then he kind of went, have a good game, boys, and whatever, and left. And you sort of sit there going, that was Michael Jackson. And then you got, right, get on with the game. Like Kevin's like, let's get on with the game. And you get on with, but Hugh Grant would be there. Liz Hurley would, they would come, they'd be there. It was kind of crazy because he was just, he was Mohamed Al Fayed and he was Kevin Keegan. It was like, there was always people like that. So it was kind of nuts really because we were like League One. But, Craven Cottage is a very special stadium and really nice. And you could see that it was really run well because the people who ran Harrods ran the club. So we had the training ground was a work in progress. It was good. Everything was done right. You had everything you needed. And you could tell the club was going places.
And you say Bracewell came in and you moved obviously on to Charlton. Now, that Charlton team was a young up-and-coming team. You had Scott Parker, Konchesky, and then you had some of the older ones, such as Chris Powell, Graham Stewart. It was a decent team to be signing for.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I got the opportunity to come there, spoke to Curbs, and he said, look, I've got Sean Newton on the right, I've got John Robinson on the left. He said, but I need competition. I need you to come in and give them a big lift, give them a big push, and you try and break in the side and play. And as you say, that was a really good side. Richard Rufus was incredible. Dean Kiley at the time, you say Chrissy Powell, you had Kinsella, Graham Stewart, Scotty Parker was just breaking through. Obviously, Paul Konchesky didn't get in because Chrissy Powell was so good. Sort of Stevie Brown at right back, and it was amazing. They got relegated that year, and that year I came, we absolutely smashed the championship. Steve, it was Hunt, Andy Hunt up front. I think he got about 35 goals that season. Svensson, Johansson. We really did, and Sean Newton, and to be fair to him, Sean Newton and John Robinson were fantastic. And I didn't really get much of a look in, to be fair, because they were just so good. And obviously we came up to the Premier League. We added a game. People like Mark Fish came in, Klaus Jensen, Sean Bartlett. It was just
big international players.
Yeah, it was crazy. We went up another notch. And it was great to be part of that, but it was frustrating not playing as much as I'd like to have played. but the team, it was just bouncing on and on. We sort of finished in top 10, 8th in the Prem. It was great stuff. And yeah, it was as much as it was a good time to be in around there, it was also frustrating. I just didn't play as much as I'd like to have played. And obviously that's when, Pards gave me a call, said, look, do you fancy coming to, I played in a reserve game at the Valley, and I was going to my car, and Pards called me over and said, do you fancy coming to Reading on loan? And I was like, you're in League One, right? And he was like, yeah. It was like, I'm in the Premier League. Why would I go there? So I was like thinking, oh, do you know what? Curbs will never go for this because I'm too important part of his, squad. But, he was obviously there at the reserve game. So I walked back in and I sort of said to Curbs, I said, can I have a word? I said, oh, listen, I've got an opportunity to go to Reading on loan. But I just had to, I just wanted to let you know. And he went, no problem. Yeah, go. I was like, wow, okay. Oh, cheers, Gaffer. I was like, I'm wanted. So, yeah, I sort of picked my chin off the floor. And, so I went back and I said, yeah, okay, let's have a chat. And ended up at Reading with Pardew and Martin Allen at the time. But Martin didn't stay very long. It wasn't. Martin left after, about a month I was there.
There's a couple of good players in there as well. Sidwell, Nicky Shorey, they were just coming up.
What a side that was again. I mean, when I went there, you had Nicky Forster and Martin Butler up front. We had some good players, but there was that side was evolving very quickly. Nicky Shorey came, James Harper came in from Arsenal, Stevie Sidwell came in. Graham Murty at right back. We had Ibrahim Sonko, Marcus Hanneman came in from Fulham into goal. John Mackey was playing there, and then obviously, you had Jamie Curitin. He's scoring goals for fun, just a natural born scorer. So, and then obviously you were looking for the Andy Hunts and the Kevin Doyles were coming through, those kind of players. And, it was very much a transition. But you know what? Stevie Coppell came in. Pards went off to West Ham, and Stevie Coppell came in, and he just sort of said, well, look, the thinking is younger players. I was 35. And he said, look, it's very unlikely to see how the season goes. And then, at the end of the season, it didn't work out. And that's when I, ended up at Brentford in my final season. We had, again, great season, got to the FA Cup 4th round and, I think beat Southampton in a penalty shootout at Griffin Park and we finished 4th, got in the playoffs. I think we lost to Sheffield Wednesday in the end. A good season. Good season, interesting.
At Brentford, you were, as you touched on, you were with Martin Allen. I mean, a guy can't be called Mad Dog without some stories behind it. What was he like to work at?
Hey, listen, I knew Martin as a player, and then I worked with him as a coach at Reading for a little while, and obviously worked under him at Brentford. And and the weirdest thing is, obviously, he calmed down a lot by the time he was manager at Brentford. But yeah, he's a fiery character. Wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a powerful, aggressive, character. He's a winner. He's a real winner. And I loved working with him. It was just a basic love of football. It was just basics of working hard and being disciplined and strong and dedicated and passionate. He's one of those characters where, unfortunately, it would spill out. It would spill out. It would, whether it was with the opposition or with the team. But I've never, he could take the paint off the walls. He didn't suffer falls, and if he wasn't happy, you knew about it. And when the eyes spun to the back of his head and he went, you were generally afraid. You didn't want to fight him or get in his way.
Were you ever on the end of one of his paint stripper?
Do you know what? It was good with me. I think I was at a stage where I was one of the experienced pros in the camp, and it's very important. You've got to have the dynamics right. You've got the young lads. You've got the middle lads. And you've got your experienced pros that you rely on in the dressing room, on the training ground, on match days, to influence. So Martin was good like that. Obviously, he knew that you know, I was getting old, and what he could get out of me, and he knew I was giving my very best, and, you know, trying to push in the right way. So he was very respectful in that way. You know, he went toe to toe with the people that he felt could do better. You know, if he felt someone, there was a couple of things that, you know, you saw. You know, I've not really seen, you know, people getting dragged, sort of getting grabbed by the throat, and, you know, getting offered out. You know, it was like sometimes you're kind of like, oh, this is mad. But, you know, he did get fired up a few times, but that was him. You know, and different managers are in different, you know, different ways. So I've had a few managers that, you know, managers do lose it, and they want to win, and you know, their job's on the line. You know, it's a tough gig being a manager. But yeah, really, really good lad, and he was great to me. I really enjoyed my year there. And then you know, just looked at the young lads. You know, I was taking anti-inflams to train. You know, the young lads like Nathan Tyson and Kevin O'Connor, and, you know, I was looking around at these kids, and they're just so strong and quick and dynamic. And that's when I just thought, you know, it's time. And that's when I picked up the phone to Sky, and I just said to Andy Melvin, the head of Sky Sports, listen, if there's a contract there for me, I'm done. I don't really keep flogging this body of mine.
That was 2005 in the retirement, is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you think you were ready for retirement?
Physically, I was. Mentally, I wasn't. I think what happened was just, you know, getting injured and the consequence of not being able to do the things you could do, and the body didn't work in the way that it used to. And I worked really hard to try and stand still, and I couldn't. You know, it was just, you know, playing and training, and, you know, I wasn't really improving. I couldn't get anywhere near where I was, and I knew I could be, but that was a frustration. So I think I was tired from just working and trying. So I suppose both, really, mentally and physically. But physically I was done. You know, knee, back, say, just the day in, day out. And I'm someone who needs to train. I think I couldn't like not train for 2-3 days and just play. I enjoyed being out there, but I just knew it was time to give it up and walk away gracefully. 600 games, not bad.
Am I correct in saying you tried to go into a little bit of coaching and management, but maybe found a bit of a glass ceiling, or some of your pathways blocked?
Well, do you know what? As I said, I did my coaching badges when I was 24, 25. That became a UEFA B. I converted that to a UEFA A. I applied for jobs, you know, probably Leyton Orient, Brighton, Northampton. There was a number of jobs, sort of League Two sides. I didn't ever get one interview, to be honest. And, you know, as time went by, I sort of thought, okay, this Sky gig's good. You know, I'd stay loyal to them, you know. But yeah, I probably applied for about 5 or 6 jobs and didn't get any interviews. And that's sort of gave up, really. Well, not gave up, but it just sort of knocked me back in a sense of, oh, well, okay. You know, and then just get into the real world at a couple of companies. You start getting into real life stuff and doing that. So, and it's really weird how it worked out. And, you know, sort of being at Sky sort of 10, 11 years, and I did the under-13s at Palace, and then I did the under-16s at Palace, and I got the call from Pardew to say, do you want to do some work with the first team? And I went in and did some work with the first team, and then he said, look, do you want to be first team coach? And I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah. So I went in on a 2-year contract, and, you know, it was a real proper eye-opener and a real learning curve to be back in that dressing room and back in the Premier League and working with that calibre of players. And it was incredible. We got to the cup final, you know, the semi-final against Watford and the final against Man United. And obviously we stayed up, and, you know, went into that summer, and I was sort of looking forward to that second year, and they sort of try to reshuffle and really try to give me a different role, which I wasn't happy with. So I ended up, you know, sort of leaving which was very disappointing. And that, so I was just like, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't for me. And that's pretty much it, really. I think that's the whole Sal's career, footballing career.
You talk about the cup final, right? The FA Cup final. I've got to ask you about Pardew, the party animal. What about that dance?
Right. So, I mean, everything was just. I mean, we were nailed on. I was convinced after the original 1990 Cup final where we were robbed. I was thinking we're going to win. This is time to get revenge. The tactics, we had everything nailed down. And then, of course, it was Van Gaal. He was going. The team was in turmoil. Man United were, if we were going to play Man United at any time in the cup final, that was it. We felt we had their number. And so, Jason Punchin comes off the bench and scores the goal. And we're just like, yes. And then you look round, you're like, what is he doing? What was that all about? And of course, we should have been closing down the game. We should have been killing it off and maybe looking to get Wayne Hennessy to lie on the ground for 5 minutes and different things. But obviously, look, it's one of those moments where, obviously, in your head, in his head, he pictured it going that way. He'd got all the tactics right. He'd lived it. He dreamed it. He breathed it. And he did his little jig. Bless him. And I don't think he's ever going to be able to forget. And of course, they go up the other end, and Wayne Rooney goes through 4 or 5 of our players, and I think one Mata at the far post, and then and Chris Smalling gets sent off, and then Lingard smashes one in, and heartbreak again, heartbreak, and unfortunately, that will that little jig won't go away in a hurry, I would say. It's a priceless moment, isn't it? What were you thinking? What were you thinking? Bless him.
Rewinding a little bit, John. When you came out of football, there were some articles that said that you'd gone bankrupt. What was the story behind that, or is there any truth behind it at all?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had everything in property. I probably. I sort of pushed the boat out, and the arse fell out of the world in 2008. It just all collapsed, and everything just sort of started going wrong in a sense where there was also, we got involved in some property in Wales on an enterprise zone that went horribly wrong. And you probably heard a lot about these film schemes. A lot of us lads got involved in film schemes where, do you know what, it sort of made sense, but I suppose you're sort of thinking, if something's too good to be true, maybe, so it was one of those things we took a punt on and stuff like that. So I think they got to a point where I was getting divorced as well. There was a lot of stress, a lot of, crap being the fan. And it was just one of those decisions I took, really, to try and put an end to it, really, to draw a line under the sand and go, do you know what, let's just draw that line and crack on. So, you make provisions, you set yourself up. And yeah, I mean, it's arguably one of the hardest things I've ever done and the most humiliating things. And, it's just horrific in a sense where, a lot of your hard work, everything you've put together, really. I don't think everything, but, she got a nice house out of it and yeah, so she basically got everything, and I ended up with nothing. But no, I mean, to be fair, it's one of those weird, surreal, weird situations where, and it's something really that it motivates me, and I'm very passionate about. It really should help. That when I read the statistics of American sportsmen and English sportsmen playing at the top level and earning a lot of money, and the rate of bankruptcy, suicides, drink abuse, gambling, is horrific, and it really shouldn't happen. And they need support, and they need help, and they need guidance and education and pathways, and agents are just, you know, leeches. They're vermin, you know, and they just leech and destroy players, and it's allowed to happen. And, you know, players are left very isolated and very vulnerable to people getting to them. And there isn't enough education, enough help, enough structure to help them make sure that they have the guidance and the help, you know. So the level of people, you know, so I didn't even know what the stats are. I must get that in my head. But divorce, bankruptcy, you know, attempted suicide, you know, substance abuse, or, you know, it's just horrific. Within 3, 4, 5 years of stopped playing, you know, and I don't think that would be that hard for the powers to be.
It leads me on to the final question, which is, this week it's become more prominent. Obviously, Lee Hendry this week, again, it's come back into the media. Your story, what do the PFA have to do? What is their responsibility here? Because they obviously have to do more.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, that's something that I think we all feel. I honestly, to a certain extent, I know they do a lot of good work. I think whenever I hear them speak, I think they're generally trying. But I think, as I've just said, I think there has to be so much more. There has to be so much more done. And I think it has to fall at their doorstep. I think the PFA have to be the ones that stand up and try and address the situation with agents, try and address the situation with wealth management and players' careers and players' contracts, and giving them that education and that pathway and that support to be able to transition through their careers and into life after. And there's nowhere near enough. There's nowhere near enough. And I hope there's going to be, I think there's an independent review of what the PFA do and what they actually achieve. And then going forward, there has to be, you know, so much more done. And I hope, you know, a lot more clarity, and because they, you know, they've got the power to get the funding needed and the right educational paths and the right pathways for players to be able to, you know, to move on from playing to being, you know, to the rest of their lives, really, to the lives afterwards. And, you know, the fact that there's no players, I don't think there's any players working for the Premier League or the FA or the Football League is beyond me. You know, I don't know. You know, I mean, the truth is, I don't know. I don't know what they do. You know, I don't think anyone does.
John, that seems a good point to end. I'm very conscious we're encroaching on date night with your booked to me, your wife, and I'd hate to get an angry email from her for keeping you too long. Thank you very much for your time and being so open with us. It's made a great interview, and I can't wait to share it with everybody.
No, brilliant. Thanks, guys.